Right, here's your brake assembly, how it's attached. It's attached back here, comes through of levers here to the front here, so when you depress this, it actually releases the brake and allows you to lift this up and down. And when you let it go, it should be tight. It should be tight, not so tight that you couldn't push it down, but see how I'm pushing this down, a little bit of force? I can force this up if I have to. But the main purpose of the brake is to prevent it from slamming down. You don't want to slam down onto the device. So when they say to check the brake assembly, you're only checking to make sure that it actually releases and allows it to go down. I should be able to move it up and down freely with one hand. And when I let it go, I shouldn't be able to push it down with one hand unless I push a lot of force. That's what we're looking at. And if you have to adjust it, there's a fine adjustment here, which will give you a little fine adjustment. I found that this adjustment right here basically only plays with making this come out, the tip of this, flush with the front of this. It makes it go in and out. That little fine adjustment will allow this button to move a little bit. The big adjustment is back here via an Allen head on this here. Clockwise tightens it, counterclockwise loosens it, the brake assembly, and it'll allow the brake to apply itself even harder or looser depending on how tight that is. And this is where you would actually adjust the brake. So unfortunately, when you have a laboratory that's got a lot of baths up on the bench, it's not always easy to get around to the back of this. Sometimes you may have to reach from in here without taking this panel off and getting Allen blindly using an Allen wrench on it and try and change it. It's very difficult. If you have to, you're going to have to pull the bath out, turn it sideways, take the back panel off and get to it. And that makes it a lot easier, but this is where it's located, is right back here, just so you're aware of where it's at. Again, the motor, most of the time if I got to check the motor, I don't have to take the back panel off. I'll usually check at it from inside, underneath. There's screws here, and 3 screws across the top here will allow you to remove these 3 panels right here. It'll give you access to the motor that's back here. And if you need to lube the guide shafts that are on the back. Any of you in the front up there, if you're looking at it, as far as lubing this, we typically lube the guide shafts with a little thin layer of 3-in-1 oil during the PM process, the preventive maintenance. This side we do not lube. We don't lube, only on these models, because the brake assembly is on this side and it will affect the brake efficiency. And it actually has a sticker right here that says do not lube. So you no oil on this one, 3-in-1 oil on this one, or a thin coating of whatever oil you choose to use. Just a thin coating. Over time, depending on the labs that you work in, I've had some labs that have a very acidic materials they use, so it seems to get a coating of maybe a little thin coating of rust and whatnot, and gunk and everything else up on the assembly. And it makes this going up and down chatter a little bit, and it's a lot harder. I found that throwing 3-in-1 oil, I'll throw it on both sides, and I'll coat this with 3-in-1 oil. Even though it says don't use 3-in-1 oil. I'll put 3-in-1 oil on there, and I'll run it up and down to try to get the bearings inside working again. Once I get them working again, the 3-in-1 oil, then I'll start pouring some methanol on these. I'll let the methanol run down inside the bearings here and clean it out. And I'll run it up and down with some methanol probably for a good 5 minutes, running it up and down, squirting, running it up and down, squirting, and wiping off everything as I do it. Eventually it gets most of the oil back out of there again, and then I can put a thin coating on this side, but that's to free up some of the ball bearings, because there's actual ball bearings down inside here. And if you get acidic material and it gets rusted and they get stiff and they don't like to rotate very often, that's just another little bit of helpful advice out there. I like to carry steel wool, very fine steel wool, 0.001 steel wool. It helps to clean off the surface if you get any kind of acidic and then it starts eating it on the material. Anything like this that's exposed, that way it makes it a little bit freer to roll up and down. I can't think of anything else. That's the basics of the thing. I'll go get the 3-in-1 oil and the vacuum grease, and I'll show you what I do about lubing this. And this is the inside of it.
Actually, I don't use methanol for doing that. It's better to use isopropanol.
Okay, use
Better
that.
cleans and it's not
That's fine.
poisonous.